Can you give some examples either from Panalyt or from your career previous to that of where, and we'll call it ONA because it's the shortest word, has been used most effectively and why that was?
Yeah, sure. It's a fascinating data set to get your hands around and to get into a format where it's kind of usable and you can start playing. And we've spent a huge amount of effort making sure that our interface sort of satisfies our goal of making it usable by line managers. You don't need to understand the underlying principles in order to start playing with it. And the kind of really early use cases have come out of this whole working from home experience that we've been going through this year. So we've got a large Japanese company that they onboard 200 to 300 new grads every year. This is their first year where those 2 to 3 new grads are not coming into a ballroom and having in-person lectures by the CEO and then spending the next 6 months in little teams moving around the organization, learning everything in a really hands-on way with daily check-ins by their manager. Like Japanese companies are an absolute machine in how they do new hire onboarding, and it creates such a deep loyalty that will last for the rest of those people's careers. And that's gone. That just doesn't exist. So there's been a tremendous angst around how are we going to onboard these. There was even a consideration of just saying, don't even bother, start next year. Just write off this first year of employment, just go home. And obviously, because the HR group was already using our people analytics, and then we were putting together this relational ONA data together with the people data, they saw the opportunity where they could, on a daily basis, on a real-time basis, see how those new grads were forming relationships within the organization, comparing that against if you spin back in time to last year's new grads, look at their relationships that they built in their first 6 months, try to map that against how this new set of new grads, how they're forming relationships. So we're tracking the metadata out of email, chat, and calendar. So we're seeing content, but the metadata gives us who they're connecting with. And because that's all aligned with the people data, we can see, are they making relationships at different grade levels? They're not just all making buddies with each other, that they're making relationships that are cross department and even cross location. And so trying to, once the team saw the potential of this, they're actually trying to now make this a positive rather than a stopgap measure. It's like, okay, well, now we can just do global onboarding. So now, spend this time, do these projects with these international teams, because now we can actually track whether that's actually working or not. So they're able to drill down to the individual to see, is this person advanced enough along? Are they making the connections that's expected? And then do a direct intervention to coach them to make those relationships richer. And so that's been a really positive use case during this work from home crisis that I think, we've instantly positively impacted those kind of 300 new grads' lives in a way that we feel really good about. Something from Uber, we're kind of looking at it the other way around. The analysis we did at Uber that really got me into understanding the potential of the ONA data from the very beginning was us looking at the last 100 or so exits that we had in head office technology group. And we were looking at those 100 exits, looking at the Slack data, and in Uber we lived on Slack internally with no other tool was used. So by looking at those 100 people's activities, there was always an expectation that we would see some change in their communication activities prior to them leaving. And I was working with the data team, and we sort of kept on pushing the timeline back and back and back. And you realize that it's 4 months prior. In the 3 to 4 months before almost everyone left, and it didn't matter whether they were terminated or resigned, you saw the number of meaningful relationships that they had within the organization started to drop dramatically, and it hit a floor. It never hits zero. There were always a handful of people who are your actual friends, and actually the average relationship score, the average value of those relationships went up. And so if you were looking at this data the wrong way, if you were just looking at the relationship score, you'd never see this. But if you looked at the number of people where they had a high number of relationships, it literally fell off a cliff. And obviously, for some people, it falls off and then recovers. Their manager has changed, or their job's changed, or they're just having a bad week. But where it falls off that cliff and is sustained for 3 to 4 months, 99% of those people left the organization. And then we interviewed them, and out of those 100 people, the vast majority, 80 to 90%, reported that they agreed this was happening, but they saw it happening 3 to 4 weeks before they left. So that means there's a 3 to 4 month gap in the data where the employee themselves isn't perceiving this happening, where they're not perceiving that relationship drop, that level of communication drop. But then suddenly they are aware of either being rejected or that they are rejecting the company, and then they leave, or they realize that they're out. And so this becomes an incredibly powerful and very, very simple and direct way that we're now using the ONA data to predict loss of engagement and, in the worst case, attrition. And it's something that's very, very, very visible, and it's quite intuitive. It kind of makes sense, right? You lose that connection to the company.
In this series, we will be speaking to a range of senior leaders who are pushing a data-driven and digital HR agenda. Make sure that you subscribe via your podcast app of choice, and also via our YouTube channel for free and regular interviews with the digital HR leaders of the future.